Several elections this week could give insight into how Americans are reacting to Trump's first several months in office. All eyes are focused on Wisconsin's Supreme Court race, where billionaire Elon Musk held a rally last night looking to mobilize Republican voters.
We basically need to dragnet the state. It's like everybody's going to mobilize everywhere like crazy for the next 48 hours. And I think this will be important for the future of civilization. It's that significant.
And down in Florida, a special election for National Security Advisor MIKE Waltz's seat has caught Republicans off guard, as Democratic candidate Josh Weil has raised nearly $10 million, and polls show him just down several points. Joining me now is the Hill's national political reporter, Julia Manchester. Julia, thanks so much for joining us. Elon Musk has poured millions of dollars into this race. He gave away two $1 million checks last night. Let's take a listen to what he had to say last night.
The House majority right now is razor thin. It's really just a few seats. And if the Supreme Court is able to redraw the districts, they will gerrymander the districts and deprive Wisconsin of 2 House seats on the Republican side. Yeah, exactly. The result of that could be that the House switches to a Democratic House. Yes, indeed.
They really see this as a crucial race for the party, but is there kind of fear-mongering going on here? Would the Supreme Court really redraw the districts?
Well, there is that possibility. Obviously, that's what Elon Musk is really trying to do, and I think it goes into the Republican strategy you're seeing not only in Wisconsin but also in Florida, in that they want to drive their base out. Look, special elections, the history of special elections tells us that oftentimes the party in power, in this case the Republicans, the base of that party is normally more depressed, or more content, I should say, during these special elections. Republicans are looking at these races and thinking, oh, I'm happy. I have Trump in the White House, Republicans in the House and the Senate. But what you have there is Elon Musk really trying to amp up the energy, trying to raise the stakes for this election. But look, it's also a big test for him, in his money. He's poured a lot of money into this race. We know Democrats are really looking to make him a boogeyman in many ways going into the midterm elections. So we could see a real true test of Musk's brand on Tuesday evening. I would caution, though, special elections are anomalies in many ways. They're not always indicative of the true general election turnout that you see in on years. So that's what we've been hearing a lot from Republicans.
The Supreme Court declined to step in and block Elon Musk from giving away those $1 million checks. Some critics of Elon Musk accuse him of trying to buy the election. Have any Republicans spoken out against this move?
I have not seen any Republicans speaking out against this move as of now. I mean, obviously that could change, but Republicans are going to be asked about this. Republican lawmakers, Republican officials, they understand that in polling, or at least Democrats understand in polling, Elon Musk does not have high favorability ratings. We know that there are issues not only with Elon Musk himself, but his impact on Doge and what Doge is doing. So tying this all together allows Democrats to present a very negative image of Elon Musk. So I am curious to see what the GOP response will be.
Another race you've been following closely is one in Florida to fill MIKE Waltz's seat. This should be easy peasy for Republicans. It's a district that President Trump won by 30 points last time around. And now, do Democrats really have a chance of winning this, or is it pie in the sky for Democrats?
Yeah, and fun fact, Ron DeSantis used to represent the seat before he resigned to run for governor. Look, Democrats I talk to say this is about narrowing the margins. You mentioned Trump won it by over 30 points, so did MIKE Waltz. If Randy Fine, the Republican running in this race, wins by 10 points or less, I think we can see Democrats, in a way, claim a victory, saying there is trouble in Trump country. You also have, polling out from an internal poll, I should say, from Fabrizio Rord, Republican pollster, that shows Josh Weil up 3 points ahead of Randy Fine in that district. Now, that might not be indicative of necessarily what we're seeing on the ground, but we are seeing, in other polls, it being a very tight race. We're seeing Josh Weil outraising Randy Fine when it comes to the fundraising in the district. So clearly there's a lot of excitement, I think, from national Democrats looking in on this race, but at the same time, Republicans saying that, just like in Wisconsin, special elections are not necessarily indicative of what we could see in a general election, say in the midterms.
Some Democrats have felt maybe down in the dumps following President Trump's election, feeling a little helpless, not so motivated. But do you think they're starting to feel any momentum from this anti-Trump messaging that they're going with?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what happens tomorrow night in Wisconsin and to an extent Florida. I think they certainly feel momentum coming off of last week's special election victory for a Pennsylvania state Senate seat that flipped, that was a Trump district that flipped to Democrats last week. So, and you're also seeing a lot of these Democrats holding town halls in Republican districts, and they're saying that that is a sign of momentum. Republicans, of course, pushing back, saying those aren't actually, true town halls. They're Democratic campaign events. So, some room for debate there. But Democrats say they do have momentum. I think Wisconsin, talking to Democrats, they are more likely to point to that race as a, sort of more of a true barometer. But if there is an upset in Florida, or if Randy Fine underperforms and Josh Weil overperforms by a good margin, you're going to see Democrats really using that to say there's trouble in paradise for Trump and his base.
In other news, President Trump seems a bit frustrated by the state of Ukraine ceasefire negotiations. He told NBC News' Kristen Welker over the weekend that he's pissed off, in his words, at Vladimir Putin. What's gotten under his skin there?
Well, we know that Vladimir Putin said last week, he essentially questioned the legitimacy of Vladimir Zelensky's leadership. He actually, said he wasn't a legitimate leader. And President Trump is trying to broker this deal between Russia and Ukraine. And Trump said those comments from Putin threaten the deal, and they make it more of a headache for the United States in reaching a deal. So it was interesting to see those, somewhat rare points of criticism from Trump towards Putin. We've seen Trump get a lot of criticism from Democrats and, allies of Ukraine for being too soft on Putin. So it was notable what he said essentially slamming Putin's comments from last week.
Julia Manchester, thank you so much for joining us. This week on Capitol Hill, Republicans will face a series of crucial tests. President Trump is gearing up to rattle global trade again with his so-called Liberation Day coming April 2nd. Sweeping reciprocal tariffs are set to go into effect, testing the stock market and our closest allies. Plus, Senate Republicans are in a race to forward Trump's agenda with their sights set on a possible budget vote this week. The question is, are both chambers aligned enough to eventually meld their separate blueprints into one big, beautiful bill? Joining me now is the Hill's congressional reporter, Michael Schnell. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. What's the latest here? Is there a good chance that we're going to see a budget vote?
Hey, Judy, look, that right now is completely up in the air. We know that Senate Majority Leader John Thune had told his members last week at a lunch that he wanted to try to get a vote to happen this week. However, there are a number of key questions and hurdles that are preventing that from taking place just yet. So still a chance it could take place this week, but still unclear. One of the biggest questions is when the parliamentarian will rule on whether or not Republicans can use what's called current policy baseline to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent. This is the Senate parliamentarian. She has to rule on current policy baseline before Senate Republicans can vote on this compromise budget blueprint. It remains unclear when she's going to rule and how she's going to rule on this. Now, a little backstory. Current policy baseline is essentially a budgetary gimmick that would allow Senate Republicans and House Republicans to extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanently without adding to the deficit. But how they move forward in this process is going to depend heavily on whether they can use current policy baseline or they cannot use current policy baseline. So a big question when we talk about will a vote happen in the Senate this week is when the parliamentarian and how the parliamentarian rules. In addition to that, there are a lot of questions about how the House and Senate will reconcile disagreements about spending cuts in this compromise resolution. We know that the House blueprint would likely lead to a number of slashes to Medicaid. That's something that a number of moderate House Republicans and even Senate Republicans have expressed opposition to. And then the third thing that needs to be reconciled, the third big thing, is the debt limit increase. We know that House Republicans had included a $4 trillion debt limit hike in their budget blueprint. Senate Republicans seem to be on board with putting a debt limit increase in the budget resolution, but it remains unclear of how large that would be and what the price tag on that would be. So to get back to your initial question, Judy, a lot of points that need to be determined before we can figure out if there will actually be a vote in the Senate this week.
Michael, you mentioned spending cuts, and I want to delve a little deeper into that. It looks like House and Senate leaders, as you mentioned, want to give their chambers different spending cut targets. Could that potentially pit House deficit hawks against Senate Republicans?
Yeah, it absolutely could be. And I want to just note, Judy, that that is not a firm yet, that the instructions, the budget resolution will instruct House committees to find X amount of cuts and Senate committees to find Y amount of cuts, Y being a far smaller number. We don't know that that is yet for sure. But if that does happen, expect some howls from some fiscal hawks on the House side. We know that hardline House Republicans have said that they want this budget, this reconciliation package, this Trump agenda bill to be deficit neutral or even deficit reducing. So there's going to be a lot of eyebrows raised if the Senate Republicans don't have to cut that much. As compared to House Republicans, there's going to be questions about if they can actually get this thing to be deficit neutral and deficit reducing, and questions about if they're cutting enough in the package. So that's absolutely one area to keep an eye on as we look to as Republicans look to move forward in this very arduous process.
As Republican lawmakers race to get a budget to Trump's desk, the House this week is going to be voting on legislation that aims to strip power from district court judges. This move comes as the Trump administration has lost multiple court cases related to the president's executive orders, the use of the Alien Enemies Act. What does that bill look like, and does it have the support of House Republicans?
Yeah, this is called the No Rogue Rulings Act. It's sponsored by Congressman Darrell Issa. He's a Republican from California. The House Judiciary Committee advanced it earlier this month, and it's poised to get a vote on the House floor this week. Essentially what it would do was it would prevent the more than 600 district court judges across the country from issuing injunctions that would impact people other than the two parties that are involved in the case. Case in point being one of these nationwide injunctions that we've seen from some district court judges in response to actions taken by the Trump administration that have then impacted folks across the country. This is something that House Republicans are trying to tamp down on. It comes in response largely to that large amount of criticism that Judge James Boasberg had received after ruling that the Trump administration could not deport Venezuelan migrants. This was something that caused a lot of concern, controversy, and outrage among Republican circles. In fact, President Trump, Elon Musk, and other House Republicans actually called for Judge Boasberg to be impeached. However, there's really not an appetite for that in the House Republican conference. So instead, we're seeing these lawmakers turn to this judicial injunctions bill, what would, as I mentioned, limit the ability of these district court judges to impose nationwide injunctions. It appears it could squeak through the House with enough support. We haven't heard large howls or concern from some corners of the Republican conference. But again, we know that House Republicans are still grappling with this razor-thin majority, so it's all going to come down to the last minute, but I don't expect this to be too dramatic of a vote.
Last week, Speaker Mike Johnson had this to say about federal courts. Let's listen to that.
We do have authority over the federal courts, as you know. We can eliminate an entire district court. We have power funding over the courts and all these other things. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and Congress is going to act. So stay tuned for that.
Now, The Hill's Alexander Bolton reports that senior Senate Republicans say they'll oppose any effort by Speaker Mike Johnson to defund federal courts. What are lawmakers in the upper chamber saying?
Yeah, this was something that Speaker Johnson had sort of floated at his press conference last week. It caught a lot of eyeballs, raised a lot of eyebrows. But as you mentioned, Alex Bolton reporting for us that there doesn't seem to be a large appetite for this on the Senate side. I want to read to you one quote that Alex had reported from Senator Lindsey Graham, of course, the Republican senator from South Carolina. He said, quote, "No, I think there's a better way of doing it, which is to limit the effect of a single judge to affect nationwide policy. The court actually has a procedure to do that, but it ain't working. That's the solution." Graham is a senior member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's essentially pointing to this bill that the House is poised to take up this week, the No Rogue Rulings Act, that would limit these district court judges from issuing these nationwide injunctions. Again, we're going to have to see how it fares in the House and if it does get taken up in the Senate. But to get back to your initial point, Judy, there does not seem to be an appetite to completely dismantle district court judges across the country.
It's a big week for the economy as Trump's so-called Liberation Day comes April 2nd. The president had this to say over the weekend.
The tariffs will be far more generous than those countries were to us, meaning they will be kinder than those countries were to the United States of America over the decades. They ripped us off like no country's ever been ripped off in history.
A new CBS News poll shows 72% believe new tariffs will increase prices in the short term. And we'll also see that March jobs report this Friday. How crucial is this for the president?
Pretty significant week when it comes to the economy, Judy. We know that President Trump has been talking about this April 2nd Liberation Day for weeks now. He's been talking about putting tariffs on Mexico, Canada, China, you name it. Those reciprocal tariffs we've heard a lot about. That has spooked the markets. It's spooked Wall Street. We've seen the Dow, for example, go down and other indexes go down because of this uncertainty and concern about potential tariffs and the potential increase in prices that they could prompt. So the fact that this is all poised to come to a head this week is going to be the big deal. And then, of course, it's being followed by that jobs report, trying to get a sense of how the economy is doing under President Trump, how it's moved from the Biden economy to the Trump economy. So absolutely a lot of important key markers this week when it comes to how the economy is doing under President Trump.
Michael Schnell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Judy.
3 of the 4 U.S. soldiers who have been at the center of a recovery mission in Lithuania for almost a week have been found dead, according to Army officials. The soldiers assigned to the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division, went missing after their armored vehicle sank in a body of water in the early morning hours of March 25th while conducting a mission to repair and tow an immobilized tactical vehicle. The identities of the soldiers are being withheld pending notification of next of kin. Search and recovery operations continue for the remaining 4th soldier. Have you filed your taxes yet? In today's Political Minute, News Nation chief Washington correspondent and host of The Hill, Blake Berman, runs the numbers on how many Americans have filed with the IRS and what refunds are looking like this year.
Tax day weeks away and millions of Americans have yet to file. I'm Blake Berman, host of The Hill on News Nation. The deadline to submit federal income taxes is April 15th, and so far Americans are filing at a slightly slower pace than last year. More than 70 million Americans filed by March 14th, according to the IRS. That's down almost 2%. Now, one of the potential factors here, millions of people that live in areas impacted by natural disasters were granted extensions, as seen with the victims of the California wildfires. As for refunds, they are bigger this year. In total, about $163 billion was refunded by March 14th, up about almost 7%. The average refund so far in 2025 has been almost $3,300. That's up over 5%. Now, the IRS has also had layoffs this year, leading some to worry about delays this tax season. Those layoffs were primarily in the compliance division. I'm Blake Berman, and this is the News Nation Political Minute.
You can find more news and analysis from Blake and our colleagues 24/7 on News Nation. To find News Nation on your screen, go to joinnn.com. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Judy Kurtz. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.